Hello and welcome, dear students, to the English class. This is your teacher, Mrs. Aisha, taking you through the space travel in the exciting lesson, The Diary of a Space Traveler by Satyajit Ray. Let me give you a brief about the author. Satyajit Ray, who was born on 2nd May 1921 and he passed away on 23rd April 1992. He was a versatile personality, an Indian film director, screenwriter, author, music composer, lyricist, graphic designer, and illustrator. He is widely considered as one of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century. He was one of the leading figures of parallel cinema. He was born in Calcutta, which is now known as Kolkata, into a Bengali family who were prominent in the field of arts and literature. Starting his career as a commercial artist, he directed 36 films, including feature films, documentaries, and short films. He authored several short stories and novels meant for young children and teenagers. Popular fictional characters created by him in his science fiction stories include Feluda the Sleuth. Feluda is the famous character who played the role of a detective. Sleuth means detective. And Professor Shonku, the scientist. Ray received many major awards in his career, including 32 Indian National Film Awards, a Golden Lion, a Golden Bear, two Silver Bears, a number of additional awards at international film festivals and award ceremonies, and an Academy Honorary Award in 1992. The Government of India honored him with the Bharat Ratna, its highest civilian award, in 1992. The Diary of a Space Traveler has the following characters. The protagonist, Professor Trilokeshwar Shonku, around whom the story revolves. Tarak Chatterjee, narrator's acquaintance, an amateur poor writer who is not a professional writer. Bhulu, narrator's dog. Prahlad, scientist's servant, who is described as a brave, foolish, and logical at times. He helps professor most of the times. He is serving the professor in his odd experiments since 27 years. Bidu Shekhar is the professor's robot, who is an interesting character in the story. Newton, professor's cat. Martian army, they are the creatures of planet Mars, and we have the people of Tafa planet. Professor Shonku is a short story collection by Satyajit Ray that features the character of Professor Shonku, who is the main protagonist in our lesson, The Diary of a Space Traveler. It was first published in India by New Script Publications, Calcutta, in 1965. Of the 9 short stories that are part of the collection, 8 had formerly been published in various editions of children's magazine. The two popular magazines were Sandesh and Ascharya. in which we have this character Professor Shonku, O Bhoot. The diary is the vital element of the story. So, children, before going into the main story, let me give you the background story of the protagonist's diary, which is really very interesting. Professor Shonku is a reputed scientist who had not been heard for a while. Some say that he has died while attempting a scientific experiment. Others say that he has gone incognito. Incognito means he has gone hidden and is continuing his scientific researches and experiments at some unknown corner of the earth. He will reappear in due time. The first of Professor Shonku's diaries comes to light through a certain Tarak Chatterjee, an amateur writer who has a fascination for tiger stories. As he is a writer, he is fascinated to write stories, and the subject which he like is tiger stories. So on hearing that a large meteor had hit the areas of Sundarbans, he visits the location in search of tiger skin. He fails to find it. Then he looks around and finds a red diary, which turned out to be the first of Professor Shonku's diaries. This he hands to the narrator of the story, who then replicates the journal entries in the diary, and that constitute the first story. The diary, even though apparently made of a material which is inextinguishable and cannot be torn or cut, is eventually destroyed by a colony of black ants who somehow manage to eat the entire diary. However, the narrator then visits Professor Shonku's laboratory and he locates 21 other diaries that replicates them periodically, each as a story or in a journal entry form. After the first few stories, the narrator does not reappear, with the stories starting with the journal entries. Now let us go through the gist of the story. Professor Trilokeshwar Shonku, eccentric genius. Eccentric means a person whose behavior is slightly strange, and scientist, disappeared without a trace after he shot off into space in a rocket from his backyard, accompanied by his loyal but not too intelligent servant Prahlad, his cat Newton, and Bidushekhar, his robot with an attitude. The story begins as a poor writer, Tarak Chatterjee, approaches the editor of Sandesh with a journal by Professor Shonku, a scientist who disappeared 15 years ago. The editor learned from the diary that the scientist, despite being mocked by his neighbor, was getting prepared for a voyage to planet Mars. He also invented a robot by the name Bidushekhar. Later, the professor, along with Bidushekhar, his servant Prahlad, and his pet cat by the name Newton, landed in Mars, where they were attacked by an army of Martians. Martians are the creatures of that planet. They escaped from Mars and subsequently lost their way in the space. After many days of wandering, they arrived in Tafa, an unknown planet inhabited by the first civilized humans of the solar system. Means creatures far beyond our human civilization who were totally primitive. Unlike the Martians, the inhabitants of Tafa welcomed the strangers in a hearty manner and made Professor Shonku their fellow citizen and did not allow him to go back to Earth. Professor Shonku and his merry band had an adventurous time in space. The editor or narrator wanted to publish the journal in his magazine, so he made a copy of the entire diary and dropped it off at the press for printing. But when he returned home to get the original diary from the bookshelf, he found the diary was destroyed by an army of ants. So, children, this is the end of the story. Hope you had a glimpse of a space travel. Have an adventurous imagination. Bye for now.